First, I'll talk about grading, I guess. So,
I sent you a revision.
You sent me a revision of which one?
Second one.
Oh, I did.
Okay. I haven't even finished grading the first round.
I'm like second one.
It's graded mine, and it's obviously if I can correct, so I can correct it.
Okay. Yeah, it's gonna be a while. So you see that. There's.
I'll probably have to revise it again. So.
I didn't grade any more stuff last night. I read through Antigone, like I said I was going to, and I put a lot of attention into it because I don't know, I haven't felt confident when talking about Antigone. Like I know it, but it's like I didn't feel like I knew the particulars of everything that I was, because I'd read halfway through it but didn't finish, and so I just said I'm going to read it slowly, and I did. So did a slow read through. I think I've got it. So I feel a little better about it. And
if you looked it up on YouTube, you could have had Patrick Stewart reading his Creon.
Really, Patrick Stewart was reading it, because I was sitting here reading this and I was going, Patrick Stewart would make a great Creon.
Yeah. No, I found that on YouTube. That's awesome.
Patrick Stewart can read anything.
Yeah.
Huh? Yes, mostly because of his reading capabilities.
Well, yeah.
No, you mean like as an actor? Yeah, so he probably not Arabic though.
No, probably not.
I'm guessing that's going to be one of his blind spots. He's like, I can't act in this. Isn't that crazy? Like the people we think are like the greatest actors, they only are really good in that one language they act in. That's crazy if you think about how many languages in the world, and like we revere them. Whoa, Jack Nicholson probably can't speak one other language. He's so good though. So gonna get back to tonight doing critical evaluations, and then moving on to the essay ones for. If I notice that I feel locked up because the number is so large, have I told you about my problems of human psychology before? That if I see a number that's too big, and that's like, you know, like if you look at the mountain you have to climb and you go, oh crap, you get overwhelmed. But if you say, all I really have to do is make it to that way station, then it's not so bad. Well, the SA2s for 1301, that's a much smaller like hill. I can get to the top of that. So if I end up like sitting and I just get locked up, like looking at, you're like, how has an adult made it this far? If you have these psychological problems,
We've all been there.
we find workarounds. That's what you do. You find workarounds. So I might do that. I'm going to do that thing too, where I'm going to grade discussion post between, so I'll get to see more. But I feel bad because I didn't get to see all the Antigone stuff before we're really getting into it. I saw some of it though, which I like. And then, so that's what I'm going to do. And I'll have a whole lot of time this afternoon to do that. I think all the phone issues are over. Did I talk to you about the phone issues? Oh, one of the reasons I didn't do a whole lot of grading this week is we had a hell of a lot of phone issues. Me and my wife both got new phones, and we bought them on Friday, which took about 5-7 hours, something like that. Interestingly, I recorded myself to make sure that I bought the right phone so I could go back and check on the video. But what you end up actually seeing, I realized I now have a recording of myself, and you can watch the de-evolution of Nichols' sanity. You can watch my sanity devolve on camera, because after I realized I got done, I went, am I recording still? And I went, because like I talked to people on the phone for like hours and hours because I couldn't get the payment to go through. And Chase is like, it's not us, and Sprint's like, it's not us, and I'm just like I'm done, like I'm going to explode, and there's no one to yell at because nobody knows anything. You know, it's not like you go, this is your fault. And they're like, I get paid like $8.25 an hour to sit here and take people through this bulleted list of points. Like I have no idea what's wrong with it. They're like, who can I yell at? There's no actual people responsible anymore in the world. It's very strange. So that took a long time, and additionally, my wife still had issues yesterday, and I ended up having issues last night. And the podcast I listened to about Antigone that I like to listen to every time, which always kind of refreshes my mind on it. The new stereo doesn't work with my phone, so I couldn't listen to the stuff I usually listen to until I finally figured it out this morning. I looked up the error codes for my stereo, and it said probably your device has too much power requirements, and that's why it's giving you this error message. And I went, too much power? And I was like, because it's a newer phone, it wants more power. More power. Y'all don't know what that means. So it was a Back to the Future 2 reference, wasn't it?
Like so, yeah.
More power, isn't it? I don't know. I think.
Yeah.
It was a very obscure reference. But
It goes hard though.
yeah, so all I did was I took an USB extender, and I said maybe based on my knowledge of physics from high school and electrical engineering, this would create enough of a capacitance on this USB extender that it will negate the system's need to try to find more power because the limitations of the cord itself don't allow the device to ask for it. It worked. So while it sounds like pseudo witch science, like it worked, at least temporarily it worked. If it keeps working, then I'll have a valid data set by which to say that it's going to continue working. But it's weird, I've just got this extra cord for no reason in my car. But that caused me to come up with the question that I now am going to be presenting to you like we did on Monday. And I feel like it's a good question. It's a question that it's a lot harder to answer. You know, like I feel like when people were asked Antigone or Creon, you're like, play title. Now this time too, there was something I learned from Monday, which is, actually was it? Yeah, it was you. Yeah, you were, interestingly, you were the smartest person to test out the survey thing because you were like clear, select, clear, select, clear, select. And you're like, it's real. It's not Nichols tricking us because you have to test
That was
it.
exactly my thought too. I was like, is this an actual?
Is this I live, I die? Is that what this is? And then you're like, no, this is real. He's like not just telling us what our thoughts are. But that, I've removed that element so that you don't see the donut, so you don't feel pressured or feel like, oh, everybody's picking this, I'll pick the other thing. You know, because I feel like there was that element too. Because in y'all's class, it went like 88, 12?
Yeah, 88-12.
In the other classes, it went 90s, 90-10, and 100-0. So I don't know if it had a minor effect on people's answers, knowing that I can be the outlier. But we'll see. The question I asked today is a lot harder, and I don't know why I'm getting that ready because it's not going to happen. What is this photo? I want to make sure that, is this the, yeah, cool. Is listening to me talk like listening to somebody who doesn't know where their brain is? That's insulting. Don't say that. I didn't want honest input. I wanted to say I wanted honest input like Creon did, and then actually I don't. This is the question you're going to see in it, but it won't let me fit all of this into a question. It says, do a 255 character max limit, and I was like,
It's like an essay.
I know,
You want
yeah,
a
well,
question, you're like, let me write an essay.
fair enough, but I had to phrase this very, very carefully. So the question I'm going to ask you in a minute on the survey is, and nobody try to like offer any, you know, just try to think in your head, like what would your response be? Which of the below group's actions, so there's this group or this group, which of the below group's actions in the play more represent what we should strive for as individuals or a society? Ismene and Haemon as a group, okay? And really, I think I've heard it pronounced Heman as well. But Ismene, who is Antigone's sister, this is a refresher, who tried to talk Antigone out of her plan, later shared the blame out of love for her sister, but never died. And Haemon, Creon's son, tried to talk Creon out of his plan, later tried to kill Creon out of despair of lost love, but failed. Because he missed Creon, he couldn't swipe that. So instead he killed himself out of despair and lost love. Okay, so there's that group. Or Antigone and Creon as a group, which seems weird because last time I asked you to pick between Antigone and Creon, now I'm asking to group them together and figure out which, if they're an admirable group combined. Antigone, who obstinately commits to the idea of obeying the gods and burying her brother as the gods command, and her actions bring about the eventual death and ruin of all the characters who die or despair in the play. And Creon, who obstinately commits to the idea of defending the state against its enemies and refuses to bury Antigone's brother, and his actions bring about the eventual death and ruin of all the characters who die or despair in the play. But he eventually and too late realizes the error of his ways and is determined the gods require the burial of Antigone's brother, and he submits to the will of the gods. Yes. No, I know. Wait. Be careful. Don't let your answer,
I know.
your question, give an answer. Okay.
Don't you think?
Careful.
I'm not.
Okay.
Really? He's like, I'm not.
Don't you calm down. Don't you think?
I don't even like the phrasing. Do it different.
In your opinion. No. In your
Go slow so I can stop you if I don't like one of the words.
I'm gonna go slow. In your opinion, is there any alternative?
No. This.
Roster, okay.
Can't add characters to it. No other roster is this or that.
No, not more characters. Just a different arrangement.
No different arrangement. This arrangement. Because this is what makes it more difficult.
Yeah.
This is I think. And you can, I am giving you this information as my way of like kind of phrasing each one of these sets. But you can still make your estimation based on how you view the characters beyond what I've said the view of the characters is for this question set. Does that make sense? You're still just picking, is Meany and Heman are more admirable?
But that's the thing, I think that.
Or, don't tell me anything. Or Antigone and Creon. So are they more admirable or are they more admirable for what they represent as we should strive for as an individual or society? Okay? Now I'll let you see the question. So you can once again, unless you've already gone there, go here. Oh, come on. Bring it up. My computer locked up, sorry. You can go to pollev.com/chrisnichols585 if you don't want to wait for the QR code. There it is. Nope, it's gone. Oh, and it died. Okay, so the photo app apparently crashed, and so I've got to go and find it again. Why would the photo app crash? What else is happening on my computer?
I mean, maybe all that shit you have on it.
That's not even that much, like compared to usual. Let's see. So let's go to my poll scenario, and I'll go ahead and start the survey. Why does it look like this? Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Expand to activate. So, here's the QR code if you want to see the QR code again to get to it. And for those who can't recall, remember it's just this. You point at the QR code with your camera app or some QR reader, you click, brings you to the survey.
He wants to do this right now.
Huh?
He wants to do this now.
Yes. Now mine says not active yet, so let me check and make sure if it's active. Hold on.
You have to put the actual folder. Like you have to.
Activate. Bingo. So it should work now. Yeah, boom, popped up.
Start surveying.
Anybody who needs the QR code?
How do you do it on an Android?
Is the Android camera, does it natively see QR codes?
Mine does, but
The alternate way of doing it is
You can do the text thing too.
you can do, oh yeah, I can do the text way. That should work. So it's pollev.com/Chris Nichols 585. And now keep in mind, Nichols is Nichols. You will not get there with Nicholas.
okay, on an Android, you literally have to download your own QR code.
Yeah.
Oh, you do?
Yep.
Oh man, that's horrible.
You have the brand new.
Some people are doing stuff. I will again pose the question.
Mr. Nichols, I want to point out this question. Just don't want you to.
I know you want to. That's why I made it. I feel like it's like I'm asking, if I had asked you, now I'll draw it in a minute, but I have a feeling I know like what y'all have a ranking system for each of these individuals. I'll tell you in a minute, yeah. But I've done this definitely on purpose. That's why this is what we're looking at. Like last time it was like, everybody's done. Actually, we couldn't even see how many people were picking last time, could we? I think I turned that off, didn't I? What now? This is people who are on the site and have made a choice versus ones who are still thinking about it.
Why is it green? Does that mean
Green means they chose something, regardless of what the answer was. These people are like,
this is a much more thought-provoking question.
it is.
Are you guys?
I'm going to show this again so people can use this information to maybe reason out if they want to, or still be just thinking in your head. Okay. This is almost like I think the reason I like the possibility of doing these survey questions sometimes, that it almost serves the same mental function of, say, the discussion posts, where I'm having you think about the literature before we talk about it in class. That way the thought itself is more thought-provoking. But then, too, right before we get talking about it in class, now I'm asking you this really difficult questions so we can kind of get our thoughts on today's stuff. Let's check out the. Okay. Some people still think of that. I like being able to see how many people are doing it too. We didn't have that last time. I mean, I saw the number of responses after, but I didn't see them ahead of time. I'm tempted to throw my decision in there, but
Yeah, you should.
Yeah.
you wouldn't know what it was. Interestingly, it fell into my hand, so I could have caught it.
I thought you had it.
Did you make that website?
The website?
I mean, like that thing?
I did not make it. It auto-generated it for me. It said that I can choose a username if I go premium, which is like, as a teacher, like $13.99 a month. I'm like, $13.99 a month? I don't pay that for Netflix. Like, why would I pay that for a poll website I might use once a class?
Yeah. What was the question?
Huh? We were talking about Netflix and society, and its
But it's not like
impacts.
you're using that from someone else's
To
creation.
make it work, that you would have to do literally a survey for every piece of literature.
You're still 9 people.
To make it work,
Didn't it say 4? No, it was like 7.
I bet a lot of people who are left here, like people who are right here, they're really just going, why can't there be a I refuse to answer question?
That's right.
But that in itself, I would end up having like, this whole thing would end up filling out. Somebody would be like, clear answer, go back and select I refuse to choose. I'm probably gonna lock it in, I don't know, 30 seconds. I'll set a timer. Well, now we're at 25 seconds. So we'll do 25 seconds.
Yeah.
Not really, I mean.
If you can see that far, you know how much time we have left.
Yeah,
Interestingly, this will probably lessen my chances of getting responses back. Because people just stare at the clock. Did you know that they found that state test scores increase when the teachers remove clocks from the room?
Really?
Does it ever feel rushed?
Yeah. And also, if they don't allow students to get up and hand in their finished packets. If they just say, stay at your desk. But I think that's now part of the rules, isn't it? They say, stay at your desk, don't move. And they're not supposed to let you read either, so you literally just have to sit there.
Yeah, they make you come to me.
Yeah, so there's almost a motivation to sit there and be like, I'll just take the usable space in the test booklet and just draw, because otherwise I've got to just sit here. I think that's what my daughter said she did. Either that or I'm
Check your answers.
okay.
I annoyed the crap out of people when I was doing this in high school.
Lock.
I finished.
So we got 26 surveys done. Interestingly, I think that's only 3 off of what we got last time. So we had 29, I think, last class.
You got no more surveys.
45% is Mini and Heman. 55% Antigone and Creon. I can see why that would be so much more split. Because here's what you wanted to do. You wanted me to have a ranked list of all the characters. In which case you'd probably go, I don't know what you do with the middle ones, but you'd put Antigone as number 1. Creon is the last. And then is Mini and Haman in the middle or something like that? Maybe is Mini last?
No.
I was thinking a good mix of both sides would be great.
Right. I was thinking more you should put Antigone or Creon and. Wait. What was I thinking? I forgot what I was thinking.
Creon and Haman?
You destroyed my brain. Hold on.
I think they're I mean, they're
I
like
think it's Mini and Creon.
I tried to group them according to their functions in the play rather than their relationships in the play.
But they're groups, you know, like Antigone and Creon are both the very passionate, zealous,
Yeah, that's.
we're not going to be swayed kind of people. And the
Yeah.
other two were like, well, it's like the violent protesters versus this, you know, the non-violent protesters.
Yeah. And the reason I pose this question is because one of the is a really interesting podcast I listen to me. Y'all might, half of you might not care. More than half. In fact, if I had to do a survey. But it's called the Literature and History Podcast. And
Is it on Spotify?
it's on the podcast app. I don't know if it's on Spotify. The iTunes podcast app. So the guy is probably one of the smartest guys I've ever heard talk in my entire life, but he makes it sound he tries to make it not sound as smart. And I feel like, I think he's a teacher, he's a classroom teacher, works at like a university, and I really do think...
His name's Doug Metzger?
Yes, I think so.
It is on Spotify.
It is. I think his name is Doug Metzger. But I listened to the first episode, and it's like his first episode's on like the Tower of Babel, and now he's up to, what is he up to?
46.
By the way, if you are a Christian or a religious person, it might be difficult to listen to the podcast because of his takes on stuff. Because he might actually be pissing off atheists too. I don't know. But I mean, it's just to me. I hear stuff and I go, "Oh, that would piss my church off." Some of the stuff that he says sometimes. But now he's up to Ovid's exile. And he's done, I guess, Ovid's Metamorphoses is what he's just done. When I listened to the first episode, because I'd never done this, I just went straight to the Sophocles stuff. And then at one point I decided to go through like Theogony, because I'd read that before too. But I went, I'll just start at the beginning, because he gets back to like biblical stuff at some point, and so I kind of want to get to the Bible stuff. Maybe I'll just go 4 episodes back and start at the beginning. So his very first episode is on the Tower of Babel. That's one of the oldest like stories that he's. But in that episode, he talks about like what his mission statement is. And if I'm not mistaken, if I'm remembering correctly, he says that his field is American literature. And he says, and so much of what we learn is informed upon by these ancient works of literature. So what I'm going to do is go back to the beginning and eventually make it to American literature. So the guy is like, so to talk about American literature, guys, let's go back a bit to Mesopotamia. Like, it's just the weirdest. Like, he goes to the beginning. It's like if somebody said to you, like, somebody's like, why did you like break up with your girlfriend? All right, well, first you have to understand. First there was darkness. Okay. Everything was void, and they're like what? And then it turns out, you're like going through somebody's like all the way to their birth, and then they're.
The first episode is Tower of Babel.
I believe so, if I'm not mistaken. It is that same one.
Yeah.
But so he's only made it up to Ovid, which is like Rome, what, 1st century? AC? AD? It's like post-Jesus, but it's like when Roman was trying to post-Jesus. AD is essentially the thing we have that means... actually, it means Anno Domini, which is the year of our Lord. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, I think they're changing it too. It says something else now because nobody likes the every year of our Lord.
Yeah, that's... What was it I one time saw? I can't remember. It was a comedian. He was saying... he was talking about how if you look at like which like religion won, it was Christians. Like Christians won because like the entirety of like the way we view time is based on like the Christian religion, which I thought that's pretty clever. But let me see. So this guy, he's incredibly smart, and he always like takes the main take you would hear on something, which like a lot of classrooms will take this into like the feminist perspective with Antigone, where it's a girl standing up to like a male in power and holding her ground and like proving her, I don't know what you would say, like.
And she'll still die.
And essentially that's what he argues when he continues with the, I almost said PowerPoint because I don't have a podcast. But he says a lot of people look at it in this way. He says, I want to kind of take it in a different direction. And did you have a question?
Yes.
Yeah.
One other question, but I remember what I was going to say.
Uh-huh.
I was going to say that I think is meaning. That's what you say, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Is meaning and Creon should have been together, and English should have been together.
Oh, because you would put Heman over Ismene.
It's not even over. It's just because of the type of character that they are. Like their dynamic and how they're viewing their timeline.
Mm-hmm.
Antigone and Haman are both very.
I feel like you're grouping the heroes and the non-heroes.
But it's meaning, is it like Creon is supposed to be a non-hero, but he's not even a non-hero. He's just a king. Like it's just him, and Antigone is like not, like she's not anything either. Which is why I feel like they should lose because his meaning is kind of floating. She's like, yeah, you shouldn't do this. Yeah, I'll help you, but it's like, I don't know. Antigone and Haman are both very.
She helps you in words, not in action.
Say what?
She helps you in words, not in action.
Yeah, she's like a paper character. Like,
Yeah.
She doesn't have a huge function to play. Like she just kind of is there in the beginning where she says.
Antigone and Haman are both they're very confident in how they want their storylines to go and how they think they're going to go. His meaning doesn't really ever talk about that. She's not like trying to get there. She's not worried about it. Like Antigone's worried about it. Haman's just like, hey, it's gonna happen, man. So, hey, let's get married. But I mean, like, I don't know. I feel like Antigone and Haman should be together. Yeah, that's why I would just want to have the
But I wouldn't let you.
Yeah.
I wanted you to sit there and struggle. It was kind of my goal. No thought ever worth thinking came out of no struggle. I just made that up. May not be true. But it just sounded good in the moment. I was like, sounds very Sophoclean. So it says here that Sophocles lived from 496 to 406, which we talked about the other day, and this was first produced Antigone in 441 BC. Something that I did not mention last time, which I did not know I'd forgotten, is that Oedipus was actually produced 10 years after Antigone. So thinking about how is, like, if you think about like the structure of the play as a tragedy, why is Oedipus so much better?
He learned.
Well, I feel like this gives us more to talk about. This story does often, but it gives us more to talk about. But Oedipus, in terms of its structure as a play, like when you just look at it on in terms of like its art, it's far better. But Antigone. I don't know if you felt like this. I felt like Tiresias I felt like when you read Oedipus, maybe many of you haven't, I'm sure, but when you read Oedipus, you see like Tiresias coming in at the beginning makes a lot more sense because that gives him the struggle with the gods from the beginning. Whereas Creon, he sort of builds up to the realization of what he's coming to slowly. Oedipus, it's sort of like bang, hits him all at once, and then you see like the de-evolution of like everything. But I just feel like structurally Oedipus is better. And it really is, he's just struggling purely against fate. You know, the gods have decreed you're going to kill your dad and have sex with your mom, and you should stop trying to resist it, which is a weird lesson to learn. That's what happened with Oedipus. Did we talk about Oedipus? We talked about Oedipus, right?
Yeah.
Did I mention Tiresias' backstory too?
No, I don't know.
No? Oh, well, you would remember if I did. We may get to that today. But
We'll make it to that together, guys.
Did you
together.
find out why he's blind?
Yeah.
I guess,
Yeah, exactly. I could explain that to you. It's really weird. But Antigone, I think in the guy in the podcast, and I find this really compelling to think about. And one of the reasons I grouped these in this way is both Antigone and Creon seem to think in this. Actually, let me go back. Antigone. No, in fact, let's start right where I was. Antigone and Creon, they're very like stubborn and they stick to what they think is right. One of them does end up being shown wrong by the gods, right? It's that, you know, Creon, he's totally against it, and then Tiresias comes and he says, no, like this is going bad because you're going against the god's will, you need to stop. And he's like, nah. But then like when Tiresias leaves, he says to like the chorus or the leader of the chorus, he's like, what do I do? I'll do whatever you say. And he's like, I think we gotta abandon this. It was almost like having a leader talking to like his council, you know, like his closest confidants. And then he's like, all right, we'll do it that way. But the idea here is that they believe that there is a right and a wrong. And Ismene and Haman seem to think that there's at least room for gray. Like there's a gray area. Heman says something to his dad like, it's possible that there is such a thing as infallible wisdom, but it's probably really rare. So the next best thing would be to listen to wise counsel.
Do you think Antigone actually thinks that there is a gray area, or do you think that her situation just made her create a gray area that she didn't even necessarily?
You're talking about Ismene or
No, Antigone.
Antigone?
Yeah.
I don't think that she thinks there is the existence of gray. I think she thinks that this is a very black and white
So
decision.
you think Ismene thinks of gray areas?
Yes.
Okay.
Ismene's like, yeah, it's the right thing to do to bury our brother.
But it's not our duty.
And she's like, but it's not our duty, and what can we actually accomplish by doing it? And I think one of the reasons that she ends up going with that decision, she says, yeah, bless you. I apologize, I didn't do it faster. One of the reasons that she ends up saying, yeah, I'll make this because I read it last night again, just to be sure, but she says, why would I want to live, without my sister? I might as well share in this with you. And she kind of does act like as though her inability to talk her out of it is one of the reasons she's sort of complicit in it. Oh yeah, I forgot I wrote the trolley problem on the board. We never even talked about it. But this becomes one of the philosophical issues. And by the way, did anybody notice yesterday that I drew that wrong? Like there was no physical way possible the train would have switched the tracks.
Yeah, no, that it would have
You specifically also said to not say anything about it.
Yeah, you did.
But yeah, I didn't realize that I'd actually drawn it like against physics. Like that's so.
What are you supposed to do? You said
Yeah, I know. I was like, do not correct me, and you were like, okay, Creon. I guess. But yeah, so we have like this little guy over here. So we'll draw that for later. This little guy here. This little guy here. These are terrible drawings. You're like, well, they look like there's a lot wrong with them, so we're probably just let them. And the train goes and hits them, and if you switch it back here, the train. You're huge, by the way. If you flip the switch, then the train goes and hits one person instead of 5. So you do nothing, train kills 5 people. You do something, train doesn't kill those 5 people, but does kill that one person. So I think that Ismene was kind of having a moment where, and this is the philosophical problem here, is that some people would argue that even if those people over there are like, was I the one that, yeah, I think this is the class where I said like 5 popes, which is not possible. But let's just say like 5 really great people. I don't know, even like the best people over here. Even if it's like 5 medical doctors who are like children's pediatricians or something. And over here you see somebody who's currently taking heroin. Okay? Like that's what you see. And like well, no, I was going to say punching a kid, but that would put another person on the line.
Maybe he punched them.
Like you see somebody over here who's like, you're like, children's pediatrician, and then you have somebody over here. How about this might like you see a known pedophile. There we go. I think it's one we can all agree really bad, right? We're like, that they're convicted and they escaped. And there are some people in philosophy that argue that if you don't take the switch, that was fate. So even if it's pediatricians that get hit and not the known pedophile, that's not your problem, because that was going to happen anyway if you were or weren't there.
No, because if you're there.
And see, some people argue that because you're now
Because
in
you're now in the situation when you see it and you're making a conscious decision.
that you're part of fate. But some people would argue, no. If the only time that I actually make a decision that affects an outcome is if I do switch it, then I've murdered somebody.
Yeah, exactly.
But if the track on the left has a known pedophile on it, like the other track could be fucking empty, and I'd still switch it.
Yeah, me too.
Well, yeah, maybe that's why the original goal of the problem is to be like,
The mini version.
you don't know who's on what track, and that is kind of how it's supposed to function. So if it is a blank of both sets, then essentially if you don't know anything about the people, you just know that they're going to die no matter what if the train goes down their track. Then you know that if you switch the switch, you're now responsible for that person's death. But if you don't switch the switch, if you weren't there, those people would still die.
That's what I'm saying, though.
But the whole point of the question is to be there, so that's an invalid thing amongst.
The question is if we consider, here's the real question I think in that, is that some people consider humans to be different, that we have choice, that we are not merely guided by fate, that gods do not choose, or the God does not choose where we go. We do. We have free will.
Right.
Yeah.
And so in not choosing to flip the switch, that in itself makes us guilty of those 5 deaths. And that then, I guess, begs sometimes the question if there's people involved in like a school shoot, not a school shooting, like that theater shooting, the Dark Knight Rises shooting, when they all shot up a Batman theater. Everybody who didn't decide to just rush the shooter, they're now guilty for the deaths of the others. Because that guy with the gun, he's a train. He's going to shoot everybody in that theater if he can. Your decision not to jump at him and stop him kills everybody else. So do you then become responsible for their deaths? It sounds like it's way different, but it's really not. Because it's a switch flip. You know that if you just run into the guy, that's going to save a lot of lives. But your first instinct is run. I mean, what if your first instinct when seeing the switch was run? I don't know, but it does change the term slightly. But to what degree is somebody responsible when a train is coming?
Why is it their first instinct when they see a train is to run, though? Or are they stuck to the track? Are they stuck to the track? Why can't they move?
Maybe it's maybe the difference in this scenario is that you have the capability of choice. Although some people at the very thought of making a choice might freeze up. It would be a lot different if, say, time paused for a moment and said, and then God comes out of the sky and goes, "Listen, my child, thou hast a choice to make." And you're like, well, what's the choice? You don't know anything about these people. Like, this is very weird. Do you do this a lot? Not often. And so, like, that would be a lot different. Versus if you saw a train coming, you saw a switch, you saw some people, and you're like, quick, what do you do? Because that adds the element of anxiety and uncertainty. Whereas when we're looking at it in this very static form, that's a little different.
Somebody said that in a war shooting, he actually threw tear gas into the
Okay,
theater.
so you're no longer the guy on
Oh, yeah, sure.
So I mean, you kind of have the same sense of what's going on in that situation too. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and to what degree can people react with tear gas? And did I mention in this class the school shooting, Parkland? The Parkland school shooting, I was listening to another podcast recently, and on this other podcast, they were talking about the Parkland shooting, and they had all these. In fact, the Parkland school system had a lot of school shooting drills. They had a school shooting plan in place. They had drills. They had rules that the teachers were told you have to follow this, and you're not allowed to go outside of these rules. Like anytime you hear school shots happen, you are to close the doors to every classroom immediately because that protects the most number of lives. And it make sure that the teachers as well, instead of trying to roam the halls and find kids and bring them in, that those people who are authority figures who can be in control stay alive.
So they had like specific drills for that before it happened?
Yes, and they had names for it and everything. They had like different codes for different types of drills. But when the people heard the shots, everybody started freaking out, and they ran into it was a school setup where it was like a building, and there was a courtyard in the middle. When they got out into the courtyard, you couldn't tell which building the sounds were coming from. So they said it was very odd because it might have been 4 buildings, because she said there were kids running past you frantically in the opposite direction in which you were running frantically, because they're trying to get away from gunfire because they hear it from over here, and you're trying to get away from gunfire because you hear it from over there. And so everybody's getting freaked out in the courtyard, and then once they've established where they think the sound is coming from, they don't change their mind, so they keep running regardless of if inputs change. So it's these sorts of scenarios, if we're put into that situation, it might change. Like it's interesting to think about this as a static choice,
Right.
where we can think about it from the outside, but in the moment, with the motion of the train, the possibility of will I kill somebody, the immediacy of the decision, could that change our ability to make that decision? Just like in the shooting scenario, could we be the hero? Huh?
That's like your analysis of how fast the train is going. Like if you look at the train, you're like, the train is dead. Like you didn't really have a time. Like, but if it's a certain distance away where you can see, like you get a good enough chance to analyze what's about to happen and to see all 3 different scenarios and things like that.
Yeah, and the problem is the trolley problem is always posed like this. It's never posed with like, you've come to the understanding of those things as a result of testing the environment. Like you see a train from like a mile off and you go, oh crap. And you see people and you go, and you're next to a switch, and you're like, okay, this is the setup. And you see them, and you go, hey, and they can't hear you, and they're not turning around, and you're like, oh my gosh, 5 people, 1 person. Like they don't phrase it, like they don't. It's always just like you're on the outside, like as like a god type figure looking and saying, dost I kill more, or dost I kill less, or is it count as killing if I don't step in?
What if the one over there is a child and the 5 over there are teenagers?
You're not supposed to be able to tell anything distinguishing about the individuals.
Okay, well, if I'm in real life, I'll physically be able to see if it's a child.
Yeah, but it's interesting because that's why the problem is always posed like this, because when you enter those variables in, that affects your decisions.
Heck yeah.
So it's supposed to be like 6 identical individuals, as far as you can tell.
Okay, then I'm walking away.
You're like, no choice. And see, that's a lot of people would say to not choose is a choice, and some people would say, no, it's not mine. I mean, they would already be
It's
here.
already like that. Walking back.
And it's like, one of those variables like the tear gas and the shootings that can change things as well. Like how much is it your responsibility to, like, how many lives can you save if you're just running blindly toward a guy?
Yeah.
Because tear gas is just you know what tear gas actually is? It's like a capsaicin bomb, and capsaicin is the thing that makes peppers hot. Bell peppers have like a 0 on the Scoville scale with capsaicin, and I may be getting the chemical name wrong, but like a habanero pepper is higher than a jalapeno, and then like a ghost pepper is higher than a habanero. But essentially what they do is, the way a tear gas bomb works is it essentially just poofs the air with the chemical that makes things spicy. So that's why you always see it's because that's essentially what they have. It's like rubbing pepper into your eyes, like in the moment. that exact feeling.
The train problem is kind of, I've been reading, when they program software for self-driving cars, it's kind of the same thing. They had the issue of your car's driving itself, and a kid runs in front of your car, and it knows no matter how hard you brake, it will, without a doubt, hit the kid. But option B is it could try to swerve into oncoming traffic, which it'll also get into an accident. How do you decide? Do you swerve into oncoming traffic? Do you hit the kid? Do you not brake? What do you do?
I read that artificial intelligent cars, like the self-driving car companies, have essentially been kind of coming to the conclusion that they're going to make an announcement like when those things come out. They're just moving forward in the idea that, and I might be wrong about this, it might have changed since I read this, but they said we are going to always 100% of the time prioritize the life of the driver. And if they make that statement, if they say that this is the case, then it really does, it will kind of change pedestrian laws. Because he's like, there will be the right of way to pedestrians might go away if there are enough self-driving cars in the road. That, if you jump out in front of one, it's going to be like, I got to do for my driver, what I know based on my variables is going to, work.
Kind of that same thing.
And it makes sense to just say, we're going to make a clear choice here. Because if you announce that clear choice and then hold people responsible for it, you might have a couple of deaths in the beginning, but I think over time it's probably going to save lives. Yeah, I mean, because can you see the other way around? In fact, it's probably going to happen anyway. The survive the, I don't know, what would you call, what's going to be the lingo we use to talk about self-driving cars? Like it was in a sci-fi movie, they end up having like a name for, like a Terminator, they'd be called like the Termies, or the, like a Divergent. What do they call the people who are like factionless, or like they'll have like nicknames for the cars? What are they going to call them? Like robies, like robots? Huh? Yeah, but you got to distinguish. Robos. I'm gonna call them right now robos, but just for the sake of me getting to this point, huh? What?
That's not gonna catch on.
It won't catch on, but I just need a name to emphasize how possible this seems if somebody comes up on YouTube with the Robo Challenge, like where some dumb high school kid's going to try to jump out in front of a self-driving car and see if he can jump out of the way fast enough not to get hit. Because if people are going to get out of a car while it's driving and dance beside it, then they're going to try to jump in front of one that they know will try to kill them if they don't move.
They're gonna use your iPod.
Huh? Enough. You put the word challenge on the end of anything and people will do something stupid to make it happen. I've read the other day on Reddit, there was like they found an avocado pit is essentially just like a giant popcorn kernel, and somebody said if you heated it up in the microwave, would it turn into popcorn? And then somebody said, well, could you eat it? And some guy said, well, it's got cyanide in it, so if you wanted to risk minor poisoning, maybe. And I was like, oh, so we would have the avocado pit pop challenge, the popavocado challenge, and if somebody would do it, wouldn't they? And it'd be like, oh, I had to go to the hospital. What's up, 12 followers? But people will do those sorts of dumb things. But getting back to this question's a lot harder, I think, because see, this guy, I think he's so smart because he always looks at things in terms of like their historical moment. I don't know how this guy knows so much about history and literature and philosophy at the same time, but he knows them all. It's like this guy I know when I listen to him, like I just know that he's smarter than me. You know, there's some people that you meet that are like that, where you just know this person in every area of intelligence is better than I am at every area of intelligence that I have. Like I just know. It's a very humbling experience. Because it's not, sometimes, you know, you might know somebody and then like, what is it? You ever seen the episode of The Office? Maybe. Where Ryan is going to business school and he's like, I don't want to have a thing. I don't want to be the whatever guy. And then like he ends up burning the thing in the toaster. And they say, Ryan, the fire guy, who goes to business school, can't figure out how to work a toaster. People will always do that. They'll be like, there's that one thing I'm still better at you than, you know, better than you at. Like I can operate a toaster better than this person. So, you know, you're like, how good are they really? You know, but this guy I know listening to him that he's far more brilliant than I am. And one of the things that he does is he takes this and contextualizes it. Well, Oedipus, he contextualizes it in the war. Like, was this the class where y'all mentioned Sparta? And Athens was at war with Sparta? Some class mentioned that, where they said around this time Athens' only like enemy was Sparta, and actually there was the Peloponnesian War, I believe, that happened during like about 10 years after this. There was the plague, so like 431 BC. Like, is that when it was kind of going on? 435-ish, 436. Pericles had died. The Spartans were at the walls. A plague had started killing all the Athenians. They couldn't. They were like, everything was looking really bad. That was when Oedipus was produced, and he really contextualized it well in history. This one he contextualized in sort of like Socrates versus the sophists, which it's a weird sort of philosophical turn we're going to take for a second. But it's real. Are we almost at the end? How is this possible? Oh well, it's fun. So, I don't know if you've ever heard of like, has anybody heard of Socrates and Plato and Aristotle and been sort of suspicious-ish? I'd say especially like, to me, maybe I'm wrong, but when like I grew up in like a Christian home, the idea of a philosopher, it was sort of like we were kind of.
Okay, I was obsessed with.
What would you call it? We were like, I don't. Maybe it's like me particularly, but it was like I felt like the people around me that surrounded me and like my upbringing, it was kind of like a little put off by the idea of philosophy because that it seemed like it was at odds with ideology of like a Christianity or something. But when listening to this guy, he actually says that Socrates and Plato, not as much Aristotle, but a little bit, but Socrates and Plato especially, believed in there was a universal sense of good and evil. There existed out there somewhere this perfect set of forms for which you could say that there is a moral decision that is right, and there is a moral decision that is wrong, unequivocally. There is a right and a wrong. And he said the philosopher, the person who surrounds himself with knowledge and tries to learn more, is the person who is most likely to be able to attain the knowledge of those things. And if you think about it, it's very similar in Christianity, that there is a definitive right and a wrong, and that those who study, like the text of their religion, then they will learn more about it and thus become like essentially its version of a philosopher, so you can more understand what is right and what is wrong by continuous study of the word, right? So it's essentially like he said that Christianity and Socratic philosophy kind of went hand in hand. It was like Socratic philosophy and Christianity, while they sometimes seem at odds, they kind of came up together because people like that idea of there being like a pure good and a pure evil, and like there's a way to like distinguish between them. The sophists were completely different. The sophists said, how can we really even know anything? They're like, we are all different from each other. Like, anybody in the room, does anybody like cilantro? Fans of cilantro? Somebody absolutely hates cilantro, can't stand the taste of it. It's like dirt or soap or something. Let's go for, what's something a lot of people, okay, pineapple on pizza. Who likes pineapple on pizza?
All day.
Who hates pineapple on pizza? That's a more even spread. And
You know what?
this is the way he contextualizes it. I don't know if this is something the sophists actually said, but he said, if we can't even agree whether pineapple is good on pizza, how can we say there's a definitive good and evil? He said, we're looking through the subjective lens of human experience, and we can't agree on anything.
But we can agree on a lot of things that are good and evil.
We can agree on a lot of things that are good and evil, but they're not always shades of gray. But there are enough shades of gray in a lot of things that it's worth looking at. And so he said that basically Plato's philosophy was that the people who had the greatest access to this universe of forms were philosophers. And essentially, too, in Christianity, those who study the Word have the greatest chance of understanding the most about good and evil from the Word, and that's what God wants. I mean, I've never heard of any scenario in which, I was thinking about this the other day and it kind of blew my mind when I was thinking about it, but I'm not going to go into the particulars here. But we always imagine Jesus, don't we, of being incredibly knowledgeable of the Scripture. One of the key things about Jesus is that he's talking to it's like, what, 12 or something? Or 10? He's talking to like the established scholars and like wowing them at his knowledge. And it's like, right? Am I wrong with that?
No, it says he asked them questions.
Did he have?
It doesn't say that he was answering.
Oh, but so he was curious at a young age.
But he asked
Okay,
the first
yeah.
questions at a baptism.
Right. And so he was interested in learning more about the Word from an early age, and that interest, that need to learn more, made him essentially like a Christian philosopher in a sense, wanting to become and learn more about God. So it's similar to the Socrates, Plato idea that somebody wants to learn more and thus know more and thus become greater. Not become greater in a sense of I'm great, but in a sense of getting closer to the truth and the way of being that will please God, or that will please whatever Plato and Socrates felt was God, the universe of forms.
So does that put specific philosophy have a name, or is that just?
He may have used a collective name for both of those, but he talked about Platonic philosophy and Socratic philosophy and Christianity. But I mean, I don't know if he gave me a term. But with the sophist philosophy, interestingly, they said because reality was so fluid, that he said that if at the time, if you could make the argument of something being the case, it became the case for somebody. You could, with enough oration, with enough argumentation, you could convince people to believe just about anything if somebody were skilled enough at orating. So interestingly enough, a lot of these sophists who were philosophers ended up also holding careers as political orators and teachers of politics to young up-and-coming like rich kids. They would essentially teach them how to be orators and thus make their truth a reality. And if you think about what is all of politics today, it's still very similar. I mean, they have like somebody who gets up and talks in front of people and makes themselves sound very convincing, and thus everybody ends up following what they want to do, and we end up making votes based on that. So somebody who has that skill is incredibly valuable. So the sophist philosophy was also sort of self-serving in a sense. If the philosophers say, oh, I'm the one you go to for the truth, that's a self-serving ideology. If the sophists say, I'm the one you come to find out about the truth as an orator and how to create new truths, then that in itself is very self-serving. So he said, I can't even really see how these lasted so long with such self-serving ideologies. But he made an interesting point where he said, if you look at the way like sophism was taken by people like Descartes and changed, and it brought about not is there anything we can believe in, and changed it instead into like a healthy skepticism and a testing of ideas to find the truth. Because he's not just known, Descartes is not just known for saying cogito ergo sum, which was, I think, therefore I am. But he instituted the idea of like doubt and testing, and he's like essentially like the reason that we have things today like the scientific method, and why we've had like this sudden explosion of like science and like testing ideas. But he said like the idea behind sophism is because you don't know what other people's realities are, it's very unlikely that you'll get super pissed at them for not agreeing with you if you're a true sophist, because you're more of a questioning type person instead of a certain person. And he made another good point, was that it would be very strange if sophists went at war with anybody. Like somebody who's a Socratic philosopher, or like somebody who believes that their ideology is the only way. That's how all like wars get started.
Yeah.
Like, this is our way. We are right. We start war. Even religious wars, same reason. They're like, you don't believe in the God we believe in, we will attack you until you believe in him. Or we will make you aware of the God. And
Did you say that was just now?
Huh?
You were explaining what philosophy was that?
Sophism?
Sophism's the one that's not like what I just talked about.
Yeah, what was
I don't know if he had a name for that.
the other one?
But he said essentially it was like the...
Socratic?
There is a name for it, I believe. I just can't remember what it is. And I don't think he said it. But he said it was like... He sort of rolled the universe of forms into Socratic philosophy. So he was speaking in Christianity in the same vein with which he spoke about Socratic philosophy. Interestingly enough, Socrates, and this is how he framed it, Socrates would have been 25 and old enough to see this at the time when it came out. He would have been a young, up-and-coming philosopher speaking in the streets, sees Antigone and says, wow, this girl dies for her beliefs. She believed in a universal right and wrong, and that she was not going to be dismayed. I like that. And then Creon, same way, but he's more probably on the side of Antigone. Whereas the sophists look at this play and they say, oh, look at these absolute idiots. Nothing but death and ruin as a result of sticking too closely to your guns, when they all just should have had a conversation and said, well, now let's talk about this. Let's figure out what we can do that's going to be the greatest amount of good or makes the most sense. And if Creon had ever actually sat down and maybe talked with Antigone, and maybe Ismene and Haman were there, and they worked out, listen, I understand where you're coming from, your perspective, but I have my perspective. Let's see if we can find a middle ground. That was not what's going on over here at all. It's I'm right, you're wrong. So, and which is what makes the Creon choice so difficult. Because essentially I'm asking you to say, like, is the good guy and the bad guy okay, or the people who are more in the middle unsure of what they think?
They're like mediators in a courtroom. They're like trying to sit down and talk to both sides of the party and say, okay, this is how.
Yeah, exactly. So have you ever been, I'm not going to ask you specifically, has anybody ever here ever been like a subject to mediation in like a custody dispute? Yeah, so I mean, it's like you sit there and you're like, I'm right, and then the other person's like, I'm right, and he's like, listen,
Neither one of you are right.
there's got to be a where are you gonna give? And you're like, never, and they're like, okay, let's take that never and turn it into a possibly, and they'll move from a possibly to a here's our middle ground, because they essentially come in there like, listen, you got to kind of. But so Socrates saw this when he was 25. He would have really liked seeing what Antigone and Creon, they stuck to their guns. Whereas Protagoras, who was one of the more well-known sophists of the time and one of the most capable orators in all of Athens, he was around 50 at the time. And Socrates is up and coming, and he's like, these guys, they're just old, they don't understand, they need to realize there's a right and a wrong. And Protagoras is sitting there going, yeah, this is a movie about a couple of idiots who won't listen to wise counsel. And it shows, like you made a point earlier, you said, but they all died, didn't you? Or like, wasn't it you who said that? Like, or somebody in some class said, but it kills them all, sticking to the, So if you had followed that advice of Ismene and Haman, nobody would be dead. Everybody talks it out, figures out what to do. Nobody dies. So Protagoras looks at this and he goes, that's dumb. Interestingly, Socrates had a very Jesus-like ending. Socrates was accused of corrupting the youth, and he was put on trial. They found him guilty, and He voluntarily went on trial, and they said, he said, "Now give me poison. I will drink the poison in front of you, and I will die for my beliefs." A very Jesus-like ending, where Jesus was willing to get on the cross and die for his beliefs. And so Socrates ended up bearing out this idea to the end, that you die for what you believe in if you believe it enough. Whereas a Protagoras would have been like, it's dumb anybody's willing to die for anything. Like, how can you know something with so much certainty when I'm not even sure my blue looks like your blue?
Well, and at the same time, I feel like if you're thinking about which side of this we should be doing for society,
Yeah.
I mean, the right answer isn't even there.
The right answer is the circle.
Right answer is both. Yeah.
This is the right answer.
Because you either have passionate people who will
Right.
accomplish anything, or unpassionate people who will accomplish nothing.
That was what I wanted to end with, was that the fact that this is the result means we're actually probably all right.
Everyone's right.
Because there is enough people in here who will say there is a right and a wrong, and enough people who question it that will probably always find some sort of middle ground or something, right?
Like a handful of us that did not vote.
Handful of what?
That did not put in vote.
Did not or could not.
Did not.
And so did not vote is also sort of an example of ism enhancement.
Hey, what was the podcast name?
Literature and history. If you listen to it a lot, you'll just notice that I steal most of what I know from it. It's called Literature and History. I think he said the name of the guy was Doug Metzger. I love it.
Oh, yeah.